So the automotive industry we're all aware that it has transformed our city, it has transformed the region, and it's even transformed our nation. It's even a personal story for me of transformation, because I think transformation has really been the key, because it's even transformed my own family. My family originates from the South. My mom was one of 12 kids in Mississippi, and big family, raised on a sharecropping farm where, got up before the sun would rise and, work until late in the day. And so from what I understand of what kind of the patterns were, was that when there was one that was old enough to leave, then my oldest uncles then went to the north, and they went to Michigan and found jobs in the auto plant. And then once they saved up enough money, they were able to send back for the rest of the family. And my mom tells a story of how, they had no plans. They didn't know when they were moving. They just came down literally in one day and said, okay, get everything that you can in a bag, and we're leaving tomorrow. And so they just uprooted, got in a car, and they arrived in Flint in 1964. And she recalls, she's from the Delta of Mississippi, a little small Delta town, and arriving in Flint back in the late 50s, early 60s, it was a boom town. She had never seen a city as big as Flint, and Flint was at its height at that point. And so just remember driving down Saginaw Street, seeing all the lights, and just being completely in awe of everything that was there. And I then think about just how challenging, and I knew this my whole life that this was the story, but I never really thought about, what that took for a family to be able to pick up and leave their lives, the only lives that they knew, to go to a place where they didn't know, the outcome was certain, or what was there, but they knew that it was better than where they were. And we've gone from sharecroppers on tenant farms to leaders in corporate America with advanced degrees in one generation. And I think that's a powerful story that is incredibly important to be told. These are uniquely American stories. There are stories of perseverance. There are stories of taking chances. There are stories of working hard. And I believe that once we can intertwine and tell both the stories of minority groups and the automotive industry, I think that's a uniquely American story to tell. And I think I personally have an obligation to uphold that legacy and to continue to tell these really important stories. So I have a bit of a non-traditional path to automotive. I began with General Motors right out of high school at 17 years old. So I went to college in Flint at what was formerly GMI, which is now Kettering University, and I became a co-op student with the Buick Motor Division. So I worked for GM for my 5 years of undergrad, and then after graduation, I joined the corporation and began in sales. And it wasn't my original intention, but I did listen to an early mentor of mine say, it's really good to learn the business of automotive. And so it was probably some of the best piece of advice I ever received. I went out to the East Coast, worked with our dealer network from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh, and eventually ended up in our regional headquarters in New York and working in our several jobs in our New York office. So I've been in sales, my career's taken me in marketing, to operations, and eventually now to communications. So I've been all over the country and even the world, and now I'm with communications right here in Detroit. So I've had a unique career. We've talked about working in different functions. That's not typical, right? For folks to have time spent in sales and operations, then on to communications, and maybe into product engineering. So with that, and even being in a variety of locations throughout the country, and even with global travel, you're given and you're exposed to unique and different set of circumstances. And so over the years, being an African American male, I've often have been the only one, be it in leadership positions. So you really have to learn how to navigate spaces, and it goes back to talking about relationships, how to work with a variety of different people who are not like you, who are different. So you get really good at working with people who are different, and I think it's been, to an extent, I think it's been an advantage to be able to, when you're used to being one of the only ones, then you figure out how to navigate difficult situations and experiences. I will say there is one, when I'm thinking about the question, when I was young, I had a neighbor who had retired from an auto plant. And he would often tell me, he would say, "Now, Sabin, be careful." He says, "I know you got this role in this position, but you're going to encounter people who don't want you to have that job. They don't think you deserve it, and they don't want you to have it." And so throughout the years, at first I didn't understand, but over the years I began to understand that he wasn't necessarily wrong. So for me, being an African American male in leadership positions, I've come to have to understand that you have to absolutely be your best all the time. You have to work hard, and you have to make an extra effort to navigate some of these spaces that aren't always easy to navigate for other folks and other people. And now, more than ever, we talk a lot about bringing your whole self to work. And it's been incredibly important to me. I know throughout my career, there have been times when I haven't been able to be my whole authentic self. And to understand the effort that it takes to just exist when you're thinking about, and one thing I'm proud of is I've never lied about who I was, but you always had to be very careful about who you trust and who it's safe in order to be your whole self with. So I can recall how incredibly exhausting it was to even just have to remember who knows what about you, and that was honestly space that I needed and required for me to be more focused on my job, and to be more creative, and to be more engaged, and to be a better employee. So it was tough at first, but it was a great decision, and the company has been incredibly receptive, every step of the way afterwards. And so I've made it my commitment that I would help ensure that GM is a more inclusive work environment for those who have come behind me. And so I've been dedicated to do that work ever since. Obviously, there's been a lot of focus and attention on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm proud to say that at GM, we've had employee resource groups. We have 12 of them for various affinity groups, and the LGBTQ population is one. And so that group provides a variety of resources for employees throughout the country. We have an aspiration that we've set at General Motors, and that's to become the most inclusive company in the world. And I can't say how proud I am that so many parts of the organization have really formed in lockstep to help that become a reality, and so many in a variety of ways. We have, at the beginning of most meetings, we'll start them with, safety has always been a focus, but now because inclusion has become such a focus, we start our meetings with a moment of inclusion. And so we talk about a variety of groups, and it's so heartening to see, because it is about the whole and encouraging everyone to bring their true authentic selves to work. I couldn't be prouder of the investment that GM has made for racial justice and for diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was a huge gift of $10 million. But I think I'm even more proud of the work that we're doing inside of the company, and also outside of the company as well. So we're both looking at internally how we support our employees, but externally how we support organizations around racial justice, and how we're supporting organizations and individuals to help lift up communities in STEM education, because we know that through education, all things are possible. And so allowing on-ramps for folks to be able to receive a good quality education and then to be able to realize their dreams of whatever their dreams are for success. And so I'm extremely proud of that, and I think it's very important that we're participating in this work today. So I'm extremely excited about electrification within the auto industry, and one of my roles in the past, I was a marketing manager, and I launched an electric vehicle for Cadillac. And so we have a long history of working with EVs, from an early start with the EV1 and going to our investment in the extended range electric vehicles space, to delivering the first long range fully electric vehicle for around $30,000. So, but the work didn't start there. We began our first work with EVs back in the 60s and even before then. So I think it's really important to tell the stories of our long investment in, if it's either work with EVs, whether it's autonomous, work with autonomous vehicles. I think you can trace the timeline, the history of both General Motors and our industry, right along with the history of our country. So when there were major moments that happened in our country, like transitioning our factories to a wartime production during World War II, to then moving how our country changed in terms of highways and byways, and how the culture changed around drive-in restaurants and movies and where people lived, and the rise of suburbs, and all that really paralleled with the auto industry. And so I think the more that we can tell the story of how we've invested in technology and research and design over the years, that absolutely connects with the work that's being done today around electrification and autonomous vehicles. And I think I'm really excited and optimistic about the future of automotive, and more than automotive, this more mobility companies and organizations. So it's a great time to be involved in our industry. You want something, if there's something that your heart desires, don't let either being, whatever it is, if it's being Black, being LGBTQ, being a female, don't let anything hold you back, because it is possible. Set a goal, work hard, tell others, what it is that you want to accomplish, and just stick to it, because I am living proof that all things and anything is possible. So I think that will be my message, is that don't let anything hold you back. Stick with it, work hard. That's always the going message, is to work hard, be committed, and then have an open mind. Be willing to say yes when opportunities present themselves, because it may not be what you expected. That was the case for me early on. I didn't expect to have a job in sales. It wasn't what I wanted, but I was willing to say yes and be open to opportunities, to moving all around the country, and every job then built on the last. And when I finally got that job that I initially wanted, I was so much more prepared and ready because of all the other things that came before me, and because I was willing to say yes to opportunities, to move to places where I didn't know anyone, or go places where I was the only one. And it wasn't always easy, and it wasn't comfortable, but it was the right thing, and it was the right thing for me. So I say be open-minded, work hard, and then be committed and go after it.